Hello everyone, what is up? Welcome back to another episode of Killer Instinct, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me here today. If you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah and I am your host of Killer Instinct. Before we get started, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you never miss an episode. We post weekly here on the podcast every single Wednesday. You're not going to want to miss it. We also upload the video version onto YouTube on Wednesdays as well, so make sure you are subscribed. Now, before we get started with today's episode, I wanted to talk to you briefly about what to expect next week. If you're new here or if you are just tuning in, I mentioned to you guys a few weeks ago that for the end of October, we are doing our Hollow Week series. We are bringing Hollow Week back. And if you do not know, Hollow Week is the 4 days leading up to Halloween where we do back-to-back true crime episodes in those 4 days. So you'll get an episode Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week. Hollow Week truly is my favorite time of the year for Killer Instinct, and I love how much you guys love Hollow Week. We didn't do it last year, but I'm so excited that we're bringing it back for this year. So make sure you are subscribed, make sure your notifications are on, and make sure you get ready for Hollow Week. Now, with that all being said, let's jump into the episode that we are talking about today. As you can tell by the title of today's episode, we are talking about the brutal, twisted murder of Donnah Winger. Donnah Winger was only 33 years old when she was murdered in her own home by a killer who had been hiding in plain sight the whole time. Donnah Winger was born on November 10th, 1963 in Hollywood, Florida to her mother, Sarah, and she was also raised by her stepfather, Ira. Donnah was the eldest of 3 sisters. She had 2 younger sisters, Jenny and Michelle, and she came from an incredibly close-knit family. Donnah was known to be a straight shooter. She was going to tell you things like it was, and she was always going to say what was on her mind when it was on her mind. She was also known to be very fun-loving, she was outgoing, and she was a great friend, daughter, and sister. So in late 1987, Donnah ended up getting set up on a blind date by a coworker of hers. Now, this coworker happened to be the brother of the person that she was being set up on this blind date with, and the person that she was set up on this date with was a man named Mark Winger. Now, the two were set up, like I said, on a blind date by Mark's brother. Mark's brother was Donna's coworker at the time, and he figured that the two of them would really hit it off together, which they did. Donnah felt like Mark respected her, he treated her well, the two also had so much fun together with whatever it was that they were doing, and Donnah really saw a future with Mark, and after only 6 months of dating, Mark proposed, and the two of them got married on March 4th, 1989 in Hollywood, Florida. Now, after their wedding, they settled down in Springfield, Illinois, after Mark received a job offer there as a nuclear engineer, and Donnah worked as an operating room technician at a hospital. Now, for all things considered, Donnah and Mark really did enjoy Springfield. They lived in an upper/middle class suburb, and Donnah was incredibly happy to start this new chapter of her life as a wife with Mark right by her side. And the one thing that they wanted next was to expand their family. Both Mark and Donnah had dreamed about having these big families, a bunch of kids running around. It was something that Donnah specifically could not wait for. However, those dreams were quickly shot down when Donnah went to a doctor who told her that she would not be able to get pregnant on her own. Now, as you can imagine, this was absolutely devastating news for Donnah. She called her mom, Sarah, directly after the appointment, and she was absolutely distraught. And this discovery definitely took a toll on Mark and Donna's relationship. There was a lot of tension between the two of them, but over time, things did start to seem like they were getting better. And Mark and Donnah, after many conversations, decided that they were going to go a different route. And that route to expand their family was going to be adoption. Now, one day in 1995, while Donnah was working in the operating room, like I said, she was an operating room technician, a doctor had actually come into the OR, and the doctor was explaining that they had a patient who was a teen mom who was looking to put their baby up for for adoption, and the doctor had asked anyone in the OR if there was anyone that they knew who was looking to adopt a baby. And for Donna at that time, it really did seem like all of the pieces were coming together. It seemed like the stars had aligned and this was meant for her. Donna, without hesitation, told the doctor that she was in fact looking to adopt, and this was the beginning of the adoption story between Mark and Donna's daughter named Bailey. And in the beginning of June of 1995, Mark, Donna, and Bailey began their new chapter as a family of 3, and all of Donna's dreams about becoming a mom were coming true, and she was absolutely over the moon. Being a mom came so naturally to Donna. Her instincts kicked in automatically, and Bailey was her entire world. Now, Mark was also head over heels in his new role as a dad, and they were both very hands-on parents, and again, just excited for what the future was going to bring. But sadly, this new era of bliss was cut short on August 29th of 1995 when a 911 operator in Springfield received a call from Mark Winger. Now, frantically on the phone, Mark said that he shot a man in his home that was beating his wife to death. Now, over and over on the phone, Mark is hysterically saying, "He was killing my wife." When police arrived to the home, they walked in on a horrific scene. Donna was laying on the floor. She had been brutally beaten and hit over the head 7 times with a hammer. Now, there was a second person in the home, and again, this was an unknown male who had been shot twice in the head by Mark. Now, first responders were fighting to try and save Donna and this unknown male. However, sadly, it was too late. Now, in the male's back pocket, he did have a wallet on him, and his wallet had a driver's license. And it was through the driver's license that police were able to identify this man as Roger Harrington. Now, as far as the crime scene goes, this was a horrible, horrible scene. There was blood absolutely everywhere. There was blood on the walls. There was blood on the floor. There was blood on the ceiling. Now, the hammer that was used to beat Donna over the head with was also covered in blood and found on the floor of the home. There also was a .45 caliber semi-automatic handgun that was found on the dining room table. Roger's car was also found parked outside of Mark and Donna's home, and this was a very suburban picket fence neighborhood, and Roger's car definitely looked a little bit out of place. The car was an absolute wreck when police got the chance to look inside of it. There were things thrown everywhere. However, one thing that stood out to police was there was a note left on the front seat of the car. Now, this note actually had Mark's name on it. The note said Mark Winger, it had his home address, and then it said 4:30 p.m. Now, obviously at this point, with this note, with this crime scene, with everything going on, police are left with a lot more questions than they have answers, and they decide that the next course of action that they need to take is sitting down with Mark to get an understanding of what he recalls happening leading up to the murder. Now, police did speak with Mark initially at the home, and again, they wanted to get an understanding of his perspective. Now, according to Mark, he said that he was downstairs in the basement of the home. He had been working out, he was running on the treadmill, and that is when he said he heard a loud thud coming from upstairs. Mark said that the thud was loud enough to where he needed to go upstairs and make sure that everything was okay. It was a concerningly loud noise, so he turned off the treadmill and walked up the stairs to the main floor of the home. Now, in order to get to where Donna was, which was the dining room of the house, Mark had to walk by the master bedroom. And he said when he did walk past the master bedroom, he saw his 3-month-old daughter, Bailey, lying on the bed. And this struck him as odd because he knew that Donna more than likely would not just leave Bailey on the bed like that. He said that that was not something that she ever did. And so because of this, Mark grew concerned and he walked into the master bedroom and grabbed his gun out of the nightstand. After grabbing the gun, he said he continued walking down the hallway towards the dining room, and that is when he saw a man beating Donna over the head with a hammer. According to Mark, the man did look at him and made eye contact with Mark. However, he continued hammering Donna over the head. And Mark said at that point he had no choice. He had to protect his wife, and he knew that this man was not going to stop, so Mark shot the man in the head. Now, Mark said that after the initial shot, the man went down. However, he then sat back up, which caused Mark to shoot him a second time. Detectives said that when Mark was talking to them, he was incredibly emotional, and he kept asking police over and over again who the man attacking Donna was. Now, even though authorities did have the identity of the man, like I said, they looked at his driver's license and saw that it was Roger Harrington, they didn't want to give out that information to Mark initially, so they had him just keep explaining his timeline of events. They had him continuously answering questions. They weren't giving him any information, but after police had finished up with their questions for Mark, Mark asked detectives point blank if the man who attacked his wife was named Roger Harrington. Now, this definitely took police aback. They weren't expecting Mark to just guess the right name or guess the identity of the man who was attacking his wife, but because he did guess correctly, they confirmed with him that the man was, in fact, Roger. Now, when Mark heard this, he told police that the reason he thought that it could be Roger was because Roger had been stalking and harassing Donna in the days leading up to her murder. Now, obviously, police asked Mark to explain at this point, which he did. According to Mark, Donna had gone to visit her parents earlier in the week while he was out of town at a conference. Now, at the end of her stay, her parents ended up hiring a driver to drive her and Bailey from St. Louis to Springfield, which is about a little over a 2-hour drive. Now, with it being a 2-hour drive, there was quite a little bit of time for Donna and the driver to talk in the car. Now, according to Mark, he said that Donna was very, very shaken up about this specific driver. He said that the driver made Donna incredibly uncomfortable. During the drive, the man had told Donna that he had a voice in his head that he named Dom. He went on to say that Dom was an evil voice that told him to do bad things, and more recently, Dom was telling him to hurt people. He then went on to make advances and passes at Donna, saying things like she was his type and inviting her to sex parties that he was going to, all to which Donna obviously declined. Now, finally, after the 2-hour car ride, the man did drop off Donna and Bailey at her house, and once Donna got inside, she called her sister immediately and told her about the unsettling and frightening ride home. Now, her sister Michelle said that Donna was very, very shaken up by this car ride. She was really uncomfortable that this driver knew where she lived now, and she was worried for her life and her daughter's. After the drive and in the days leading up to the murder, Mark said that Donna began receiving some very strange phone calls harassing her. Donna told Mark about this, and he immediately called the driving company, who was able to tell him who the driver was that drove Donna, and that driver was Roger Harrington. So the driver that made Donna very disturbed and frightened for her life, the same one that she told her sister and Mark about, that was Roger Harrington. This was not the first time that police had heard the name Roger Harrington either. They were actually very familiar with Roger. Roger had multiple domestic disputes with his wife at his trailer home in Springfield that police were called out to. They were very much made aware of these situations, and they were aware of Roger. So they believed that it was very possible that Roger could have sought out Donna. He could have stalked her. He could have been obsessed with her. They thought it could have been possible that he walked into the home, tried to make an advance at Donna, tried to make a pass at her, and when she rejected him, his anger took over. He could have grabbed the hammer, and that is when he could have attacked and murdered her. Now, even though police believed that this theory was very plausible, Roger's family believed otherwise. Roger's family has said from the very beginning that they do not believe that Roger has a mean bone in his body. They say that he is harmless and that he is not this monster that everyone wants to paint him out to be, and that everyone has the wrong idea of Roger. According to Roger's sister, she said that he did have this alter ego named Dom, but Dom was just a Halloween mask. He had this rubber Halloween mask that he liked to wear every so often, and he referred to the mask as Dom, but that was the extent of it. She said that Roger had actually told his nephews that the mask was only to scare people. It wasn't to create this entire persona or to take on on this evil voice or an evil character that was living in his head. It simply was a Halloween mask that was used to scare people. That is what his family had to say in reference to that. But again, because of Roger's history and because of the crime scene itself and the evidence that was initially presented, police believed that this was a very cut and dry case. They stated that they believed that Mark acted in self-defense and was protecting his wife. And because of that, this case actually ended up being closed within 48 hours. So initially, this was a very cut and dry case and the case was closed. But this would only be the beginning. Right after Donna's murder, everyone really gathered around Mark to support him and Bailey during this time. His friends, his family, his rabbi, everyone was there for him to the best that they could be. Donna's family, her mom and her sister would even take turns flying in and out of Springfield to help with Bailey and to help Mark. And over time, Donna's family noticed some off-putting behavior from Mark. According to them, Mark seemed very disconnected. He was quiet. He was drinking a lot. He would watch violent movies, which to them was pretty bizarre given the nature of how Donna was killed. It just seemed like a little bit of an odd pick. But again, they just thought that this was Mark's grieving process. And even though they didn't understand it fully, they knew that they couldn't judge it because everyone grieved differently. Now, it was about 4 months after Donna's murder when Sarah, Donna's mom, had suggested to Mark that he should look into getting a nanny for Bailey. And he decided that this was a great idea. This was something that he wanted to look into. And about 6 months after Donna's death, that is when Mark hired a woman named Rebecca Simic to become Bailey's nanny. Rebecca was incredibly sweet. She was a very beautiful young woman and was eager to jump into this role. Rebecca said that she felt compelled to help Bailey because she felt that Bailey had already suffered so much loss in such a short period of life, and she wanted to come in and be a positive influence in Bailey's life. Now, when Rebecca began her nannying job, her and Bailey really connected. They spent so much time together, and this was definitely an adjustment period for everyone, specifically Donna's family. Even though they were the ones that really suggested that Mark look into getting a nanny, it was hard for them seeing a new woman come into Bailey's life and really take on that role and do the things that Donna was doing for Bailey leading up to her death. Their feeling was that they never wanted Donna to be replaced. They never wanted Bailey to not know who her mom was. Donna's sister even said, quote, "I didn't want to like Rebecca, but it was hard not to like her. Seeing her with Bailey, there was really nothing bad we could say about her," end quote. Now, ultimately, because Rebecca was spending a lot of time with Bailey, this also meant that she was spending a lot of time around Mark as well. But Rebecca noticed that there was someone that was lingering around to make sure that they also stayed in the picture of Mark and Bailey, and that was Donna's best friend. Now, Donna's best friend is a woman named DeAnn, and Rebecca said that DeAnn was pushing almost to the point where it was uncomfortable to be in Bailey's life. She would do things and say things that really made it seem like she was trying to interfere or just put herself in the position to always be there for Mark and Bailey. And again, one could argue that it was a grieving process and DeAnn just wanted to be there for Bailey, but Rebecca said that it seemed a little bit more than that. But whenever Rebecca would bring this up to Mark, Mark told Rebecca not to worry and that, again, this was DeAnn's way of trying to cope with the loss of her best friend, and she wanted to be connected with Bailey in order to stay connected with Donna. That was the way that Mark painted this picture for Rebecca. Now, like I just mentioned, because Rebecca and Bailey were spending lots of time together, this also meant that Rebecca and Mark were spending lots of time together. And over time, this professional business relationship, it really transformed into a personal romantic relationship. The two were spending a lot of time together with Bailey, and Rebecca said that it was easy to feel like she was playing house with Mark because the two of them are raising a child together. Rebecca said that Mark made her feel like she was an angel on earth. She said that he would say that she was sent to him by God or even possibly by Donna. He would tell her that when you've already had a good marriage, it's natural to want to find that again, and that he was finding those feelings with Rebecca. Now, Mark also told Rebecca that he didn't think that he was able to have children because of what he went through with Donna. So you can imagine Mark and Rebecca's surprise when, after only a little over a month of nannying, Rebecca became pregnant. Rebecca said that Mark was absolutely thrilled at this news and he wanted to get married to Rebecca right away. And he also wanted more kids with Rebecca. He saw a future with her. Mark was even willing to convert to Christianity for Rebecca, and he had been raised Jewish his entire life and he was very loyal to his faith. And so this change really took everyone by surprise. Mark was very close with his rabbi, and his rabbi asked him why he was willing to convert to Christianity. And Mark told his rabbi that Judaism was too difficult and unforgiving. Now, while all of this was happening, Mark was also filing a civil suit. He was filing a wrongful death lawsuit against BART Transportation, which was the car service that Roger Harrington had worked at. Mark and Donna's family felt like Donna lost her life over someone that BART Transportation should have never hired, and they felt like BART Transportation needed to take accountability for this. We will circle back on that civil suit in a little bit, but I want to jump to a little over a year after the murder. This was in October of 1996. Mark and Rebecca actually eloped in Hawaii. 2 months after eloping, they sold their house, which was the original home that Mark and Donna were living in, and then Rebecca moved in once her and Mark started having a relationship, and Mark bought a new house for them in the countryside, and together, Mark and Rebecca had 3 more children. So together, they were a family of 6 because you had Mark, Rebecca, Bailey, and the 3 other kids. Now, with Mark stepping into this new era of his life with Rebecca, he really began slowly but surely shutting out Donna's parents and her family, who had really been there every step of the way with him up until this point. Donna's family really felt as if Mark wanted to erase the memory of Donna completely, and that was very unsettling and upsetting for them. Every time Sarah, Donna's mom, was around Bailey, Mark would get very uptight and not want Sarah to even mention Donna's name, and he would get very upset if she were to ever do so. This actually got to the point where Mark ended up writing Sarah a letter telling her that he did not want Bailey to refer to Sarah as her grandma. He really didn't even want Bailey to know that she was her grandma at all. And Sarah was absolutely devastated by this, as you can imagine. She wrote back to Mark begging him to reconsider his decision. However, he said that the decision was final. And again, this was incredibly frustrating for Donna's family because they felt as if they were doing everything to try and keep Donna's memory alive, but it seemed like Mark was trying to do everything he could to make it seem like Donna never even existed. Now, I want to fast forward to about 3 years after the murder in October of 1998. One day in October, Mark needed to go to the hospital. He wasn't feeling well, something was wrong, and he needed to go to the emergency room, so Rebecca went with him. Now, while they were at the emergency room, that is when Rebecca saw DeAnn, again, Donna's best friend. Now, Rebecca was uncomfortable around DeAnn. She felt in the beginning of her and Mark's relationship that DeAnn was really forcing herself into Bailey's life and into Mark's life and really trying to make a point that she wasn't going anywhere on behalf of Donna. So, seeing her in the scenario, Rebecca did feel uncomfortable. She felt like DeAnn was giving her an odd glare the entire time, but she just chalked it up to DeAnn not wanting Rebecca and Mark together out of respect for Donna and because she felt like Donna was being replaced, which in theory made sense. However, what Rebecca did not know was that DeAnn was actually harboring a secret that was about to crack this case wide open. 3.5 years after Donna's murder, DeAnn went to the police to tell them that she had information that may be important to the authorities in regards to Donna's case. And when police sat down with her, DeAnn shocked everyone by confessing to police that she had actually been having an affair with Mark leading up to Donna's murder. And this was not just some physical fling or some random hookup. This was a full-on romantic relationship. Mark was saying, "I love you" to DeAnn. They fantasized about running off and starting a new life together. And this was an absolute crazy piece of information for police to hear. This was Donna's best friend. She was there when Donna brought Bailey home the first day she was adopted. She was there for all of the gatherings, all of the big moments. And now she's saying that she was having an affair with her best friend's husband the entire time. Donna's sisters did remember that when she was alive prior to her murder, Donna told them that DeAnn was experiencing some marital problems with her own husband because, yes, DeAnn was also married. And Donna told them that Mark was being this stand-up guy. He was really helping DeAnn throughout the issues that she was facing with her husband and in her marriage. He really stepped up to be a mediator and someone who could communicate to both of them and try and guide them and navigate them through this difficult point in their marriage. DeAnn said that looking back, she felt a tremendous amount of guilt for harboring this secret and betraying her best friend. But she also told police that leading up to the murder, Mark made several unsettling statements. He would say things like, "It would be easier to be together if Donna was dead." But that wasn't all. Mark said that when he learned about Roger Harrington, because Donna told him about the unsettling car ride that she had had with him, she said that at that point, Mark saw an opportunity. He saw how frightened Donna was of Roger and decided to take advantage of that by setting up her own murder. DeAnn told police that Mark even told her that he needed to figure out a way to get Roger into his home. Now, the day of the murder, Mark actually called DeAnn and asked her if she would always love him no matter what, to which she told him yes. And several hours later, Donna was dead. After the murder, DeAnn said that her affair with Mark continued for about 6 months and ended when he became very serious with Rebecca. However, there was a crossover. There was a time where he was seeing both her and Rebecca. In regards to why now, why DeAnn was coming forward with this information now, she said that the mental toll that this information took on her was incredibly taxing, so much so that she had attempted to take her own life on multiple occasions. And she said that she was at her wit's end and was not able to hold on to this information for any longer. Now, obviously, with this new confession, with this new piece of information, police are looking at this case from an entirely different perspective, an entirely different angle. And they decided to go back and look at the original evidence and see if there was anything that stood out now having this new piece of information. They wanted to see if maybe there was anything that they glossed over at the time that now they could look back and pinpoint that maybe something wasn't right. And when they did this, there were several things that struck them as odd. Now, something that was looked over initially was the way in which Roger's car was facing. Roger's car was facing in the opposite direction of traffic, so he would have pulled up to the street and he would have almost had to turn his car around just to face the other way. This struck police as odd because this would have meant that when Roger was trying to leave the house, he would have had to turn his car around just to drive away. And police thought if he was pulling up to the house to commit a murder, he would want to get out of there as soon as possible and not make things more difficult for him by turning around in the opposite direction of traffic. Along with that, there were several tools that were discovered in Roger's car as well that could have been used as weapons, but were not. For example, there was a tire iron found in his car, and there also was a knife, but for whatever reason, Roger didn't bring those items in the house with him. And you would think if he was going into the home with the purpose of killing Donna, then he would have brought all of the weapons that he could. Now, again, detectives thought that this this was very suspicious. Now, when it came to inside of the home, something that was pointed out to police this time was that Roger's coffee mug was sitting on the dining room table in the same room where both Roger and Donna's bodies were discovered. Now, again, detectives found this to be very suspicious because why, if Roger is going into the home with the purpose of killing someone, would he casually bring in his coffee mug? He leaves the knife in the car, but he brings in his coffee cup. It just didn't really make a lot of sense logistically when you think about trying to carry out a murder seamlessly. When you think about what would be the most efficient way that he could go in and end someone's life, why would he bring the coffee cup in? Now, a big piece of evidence that was overlooked initially were three Polaroid pictures that the initial detective took at the crime scene. Now, these Polaroid pictures painted a very different scenario than the one that Mark initially told police. Now, just to remind you, Mark had initially told the detectives that when he approached Roger, Roger was kneeling over Donna's body and was hitting her repeatedly in the head with a hammer. He said he shot Roger and that Roger fell backwards. And if that were the case, police had determined that Roger's feet would have been by Donna's head. However, that is not how the bodies were found. Roger and Donna's bodies were found pretty much parallel to each other. They were lying in the same direction. So Roger's head and Donna's head were facing the same direction. Same goes with their feet. And there was some space in between the two of them. Now, this told police that this murder could not have taken place the way that Mark had described it. And with this new information about him having an affair with DeAnn, things were beginning to look very suspicious because now, with the information about the affair, police think that Mark has an entirely new motive that they did not know about before. Because they didn't know about the affair, they didn't think that there was any reason that Mark could have or would have wanted his wife dead. But now they're thinking differently. In September of 1999, detectives reached out to Donna's family and told them that they believed that Mark was the one who murdered Donna and Roger. And as you can imagine, Donna's family was in absolute shock. One of the things that they said over and over again in the beginning of Donna and Mark's relationship was how well Mark treated Donna. It was something that all of them were so happy about because Donna was so incredibly happy as well. So to have that person, the person that they saw treat Donna amazingly, be the same one to end her life was unfathomable for them. And again, even though they didn't agree with some of the ways in which Mark chose to move on with his life after Donna's death, they never thought it was possible that he could have been the one responsible for it. Now, you might be sitting there wondering, with all of this information, how did Mark ever get Roger in the house to begin with? How did that happen? Because in order for this all to make sense, in order for police's theory to make sense, Roger would have had to have been in the house voluntarily. So how did that happen? Well, one of Roger's friends named Susan actually came forward and spoke to police and told them that she was with Roger when he got a phone call from someone who asked Roger to come to their house on the day of the murder. Now, Roger wrote down on a little note the name of the person who called, the address, and the time to be at the house, and that same note was the one that was found in Roger's car. As I told you in the beginning, inside of Roger's car, there was a note, a piece of paper with Mark's name, his address, and a specific time on it. And that information proved that Mark had lured Roger into his home with the pure purpose of killing him. Mark saw an opportunity with Roger. He saw his wife's fear. He saw how uncomfortable Donna was over Roger, and he decided to take advantage of his wife, to take advantage of the experience that she went through, and to take advantage of how scared she was by this man and use that against her. Now, initially, when it came to Rebecca, Rebecca did not believe a single bit of this. She did not believe that any of this could be true. She did not believe that Mark was involved, and she didn't even believe that it could be possible that he was. She said that she was living in a fairy tale life with Mark, and there was no way that he was a closeted killer. And as time passed and years went on, Rebecca said that she grew more and more confident because there was no arrest of Mark, which to her meant that the police didn't have any information against him. They didn't have any evidence that could send him to jail, so she thought that Mark was in the clear. However, On August 23rd of 2001, a grand jury went forward and indicted Mark for the murder of both Donna and Roger. And when the indictment was finalized, a warrant was issued for Mark's arrest, and he was arrested at his work. Now, this trial began in May of 2002, and Rebecca stayed by Mark's side during the trial. She was there every single day, and Donna's family was also there in support of Donna. Now, the prosecution was trying to prove that Roger was at the house not to murder Donna, but to meet with Mark. Their wording was very simple. They said, if it was a meeting, it was a murder. Meaning, if Mark had set up a time to meet with Roger to come to the house, then it's clear that he lured him there with the sole purpose of killing him. Prosecution argued that there were no signs of forced entry and that they believed that Roger was willingly let into the home by Mark himself. They believed that after Roger came into the home, that is when Mark shot him, which caused Donna to come running into the dining room, and that is when Mark beat Donna over the head with the hammer before calling 911. Now, prosecution also picked up on an interesting detail here. They said that when Mark was on the phone with 911, Mark told the operator that he shot the man who was killing his wife. He made it clear that he shot the man in the head. But when police showed up, it was clear that Roger had been shot twice, not just once. Mark didn't say on the phone that he shot the man twice. He only said that he had shot the man. And while some may call it semantics, the prosecution was saying that it was suspicious. The prosecution theorized that while Mark was on the 911 call, you can hear Roger in the background, and it sounds like he is moaning, and you can hear that. That's not theory. You can hear the noises in the background. And while we can't say that it was 1,000% Roger, given the circumstances, it seems more than likely. The prosecution argued that because Roger was still not dead and making noises while Mark was on the phone, Mark had to hang up the call, which he did, and Mark then shot him one more time, ensuring that Roger would be dead by the time authorities arrived. When getting off the 911 call, Mark told the operator that he needed to go because his baby was crying, but you don't hear any babies crying in the background of the call. So the prosecution argued that that was a lie and an excuse to cover up the fact that he was going to shoot Roger one more time. Now, the defense, on the other hand, the defense in this case, they argued that Roger was in fact mentally ill. They said that he was an unstable man who had a dark side, and clearly Donna was afraid of him. That was all true. Donna was terrified of Roger. She told her sisters, she told her mom, she told Mark, and they said that Roger entered the home that day with the intention of killing Donna. But again, the key person in this case who really merges everything together is DeAnn. And DeAnn did testify in the trial, and she talked about the day that Mark came to the emergency room. Like I mentioned earlier, Rebecca and Mark came to the hospital one day when Mark was not feeling well, and DeAnn had a chance to speak with Mark. DeAnn said that she asked Mark how he was able to live with himself after doing what he did, and Mark told her that he had found Jesus and that he had been forgiven. He also told DeAnn that if she were to ever tell anyone that, quote unquote, their gooses would be cooked. And DeAnn was also granted immunity for her testimony against Mark. By the way, I do want to point that out there if you're wondering if DeAnn ever received any sort of consequence for harboring this information or harboring this secret. She was granted immunity just based off of her testimony. Now, when both the prosecution and the defense rested their case, the jury then deliberated, and when they came back, they found Mark Winger guilty of the murder of Donna and Roger. Both Mark and Rebecca were absolutely shocked by this verdict. Again, from the beginning, Mark had claimed his innocence, and Rebecca, up until this point, thought there wasn't a world that existed where Mark would be found guilty. But she also didn't know a lot of the evidence in the case. She said that during the trial, that was the first time that she heard a lot of this information. There was a lot of things that she did not know, and she was seeing a lot of different things for the very first time. At the sentencing, Mark was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murders of Donna and Roger. And after the trial, Rebecca moved to Louisville with her kids to begin a new chapter of her life near her family. She also changed all of her kids' last names back to Simic, which was her maiden name, and she divorced Mark. She said that she wanted her and her kids to be seen for who they are and not to be tied to who Mark was and what he did. Now, Donna's family have also kept Donna's memory alive by honoring her in different ways. They began a nonprofit called Donna's Fund to empower domestic violence survivors. They also have hosted several different events to bring communities together to honor Donna's life. So that, you guys, is the case of Donna Winger. I'm very curious to hear what you guys have to say about this case. I'm curious to know where you stand. Do you believe that Mark was guilty or not guilty? To this day, he proclaims his innocence and said that he has nothing to do with the murder of his wife. Do you believe that DeAnn should have been charged with anything for harboring this secret and not telling police about what she knew sooner? Let me know what you think in the comments below. But with that being said, you guys, that is all for me today. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Killer Instinct. Again, if you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah. I'm your host of Killer Instinct. Make sure you go ahead and hit the subscribe button. That way you never miss an episode. We post weekly here on the podcast every single Wednesday. You're not going to want to miss it. And I will see you next week for the beginning of our Halloween series. So until then, stay safe. Bye, guys.